now I'm pushing with a new variation, and it's the first time I'm talking about that. That is the spare roof technique B, or what we call the Ferreira Ishida technique.
Welcome to the Rhinoplasty podcast with me, Dr. Cameron McIntosh. So we have one goal in this podcast, and that is to improve you as a patient or you as a surgeon's education. We hope that you're going to have fun as we dig deep into who these phenomenal human beings are, the world leaders in rhinoplasty, as we interview them weekly and learn how we can become better surgeons and how we can expect better outcomes as patients. I want to give a shout out to MedHold, the suppliers of Medicon instruments in South Africa, who've come in as our first month sponsor. MedHold makes some absolutely fantastic instruments to use during rhinoplasty. Surely my favorite must be the black little suction dissector for septoplasty. It's one of the most nimble little instruments to use, and it gives us great outcomes. So MedHold, thank you very much. What's really cool is that MedHold have agreed for a 10% discount to anybody who sends them an email with the name Rhinoplasty Podcast. So you need to remember to send that email to Letty Swanepoel, and Letty's email address is l.swanepoel, that's l.swanepoel at medhold, it's medhold.co.za. l.swanepoel at medhold.co.za. Mention Rhinoplasty Podcast and get a great discount on some fantastic instruments. So today, I'm very excited to have a man who's been a doctor for nearly 30 years. He comes from Porto in Portugal. Not only did he then finish medicine almost 30 years ago, he ended up doing otolaryngology, so he's an ENT surgeon, and then he super specialized even further in facial plastic surgery. But he's started a very interesting group called the Research Group in Rhinoplasty Surgery. We're going to learn more about that. And he's got a lot of other interests, and it's a great honor and privilege for me to welcome Miguel Gonçalves Ferreira. Miguel, thank you for being on the show tonight.
Thank you so much, Cameron, for inviting me. I will try to do my best to help, especially the new ones. And thank you for inviting me.
So Miguel, I'm going to kick off. I know you're a man who is passionate about rhinoplasty, but you've got a lot more other interests. So let's go back. 1993 is when you became a doctor. What made you decide to become a doctor?
Well, it's always a hard question to answer, but because my interest generally in biology, I always love that kind of stuff, that in the labs with the tubes and doing chemical experiences. And biology, it was really my big field, and inside biology, medicine. But it was more a scientific thought, scientific wish, and then being with people, of course. And that's it.
And then how did you end up getting into rhinoplasty of all things?
Well, it was a long journey. In the beginning, yes, I was really interested in changing the shape of the nose. And I first started doing head and neck surgery. It's my other passion in surgery. I did lots of head and neck, and I tried to do at the same time to balance between head and neck and facial plastic. It's not easy. I only know one guy that do it very well, both Peter Lohaus from Amsterdam. Maybe there are many other guys, I don't know them, but it was really hard. And suddenly I had to quit one of them. So I quit head and neck, and I just fully devoted my time to facial plastic. It was a long journey because we had no background in my hospital in facial plastic. My otolaryngology department was an old one, not that old, but with no tradition in rhinoplasty and facial plastic. And I have to learn for myself. It was a long journey. That nowadays my residents, they don't have to do that journey, but it was okay. And it was a great pleasure for me to start almost from the zero in the facial plastic. In rhinology, we had lots of experience in functional surgery, not in facial plastic, not in aesthetic surgery.
But Miguel, what really inspires me is the fact that you start from very little at the university in Porto, where you now on the faculty. You've now built up facial plastics, but now you also go ahead and you go and do a PhD last year. Tell me a bit more about that.
Yes. Well, I was very interested in the biomechanical engineering of the nasal pyramid and how to explain with engineers how to explain the mechanisms that support the spiral technique, the technique that I was enrolled with. And we discussed a lot with my friends, the engineers, and I thought that they were the only ones that could give us an answer, because it's a structure, the nose, and we should have the answer in the Faculty of Engineering. And we start to do lots of research, 3D modeling, studying cartilage, studying resistance of cartilage. And then suddenly someone told me, well, why not doing a PhD? You are doing the same of a PhD or something more than a PhD. So I spoke with my faculty and I started the program. It was the last 4 years, so the total duration was 4 years of PhD. And well, it was really good, okay? But I think that maybe I didn't change anything if I didn't do that PhD, because I'm still working on the same problem of cartilage. We are very interested in artificial cartilage. There are many groups, or at least a few groups in the world, that they are studying artificial cartilage. We are still studying that. We are still in the 3D modeling of the nasal pyramid and what happened with surgery each time we do something in the nose, what happens and why it happens. And well, the PhD was something like, it was in parallel with this, because before the PhD and after the PhD, I'm still interested in that kind of stuff. And well, but it was really a good achievement for me, of course.
Well, that's congratulations. Now, we're so proud of you. I know Filio Lakakis also got a PhD last year, and it's inspiring. What would you say to people who are considering to further their academic career through a PhD?
Well, I think it's very, very interesting. Anyone can do a PhD. At least theoretically, anyone can do it. It's not. The problem is the focus. It's like almost in all things in life. It's a focus. You have to be focused. And we have to learn how to write papers. We have to learn how to read papers. We have to take our time. It's very difficult nowadays because we are always running. We don't have time to do anything. There are so many solicitations at the same time. We live in a digital era that is very, very stressing. We have to learn how to balance our time in between our friends, our all the other stuff that we like, non-medical things, and it's very, very hard. I would advise that someone that are interested in science and really likes science just the way it is should start a PhD program. And it doesn't matter if it takes 4, 5, 6, or 7 years. You just do a PhD. It's really grateful. Most of us we think that PhD is something. It's a degree. It's the end of something. It's not the end of anything. PhD means something that your university recognizes you as an investigator. That's it. That's the beginning of something. It should be the PhD, the beginning of something, not the end, not a stage to stay like that. It's a recognition of the university that you are really an investigator.
Sure. So I want to come back to that. But I want to ask you, how do you balance your life? Because I'm sure you must be busy with lots of other things apart from rhinoplasty. I mean, I know you're very passionate about photography. I've seen that. Apparently, you've even got your own photography book. Tell us a little bit more about what you do when you're not doing rhinoplasty.
Yes, I try to do, well, it's not easy to balance. Mostly in this last part of the PhD, it was really, I quit a little bit the things that I really like. And, many of us that maybe would see this podcast know that I'm in love with photography for a long time. I bring my book. I have a book. It's one of my prouds. It's very difficult to show here. But well, it's something. It's split in colors. The chapters are colors, and I have 10 chapters. 10 chapters with 10 colors, with the photography that I made all around the world. Well, photography is one of my hobbies. Of course, I love sports. I was a volleyball player. I was a national championship of volleyball.
Wow.
And I love volleyball. Yes. I still ride my motorbike. Well, there are many things that I do always. I cycle. It's very interesting for me that each time I develop my skills in other areas that I really like, I think I get a better doctor. For instance, I have a group of friends, what we call the best friends. Most of them, they are architects. They are not doctors. Well, it was life. It happens like that because they were my friends when we were 14, around 13, 14 years old, and then each one take his life. And I'm really passionate for architects as well, and I read it deeply. I study architects, and it's really, really, really interesting. And I think it helps us. I don't do it because it helped me to be a better doctor. I do it because I love it, But in my faculty, we have a sentence of the major of the faculty that says that a doctor that only knows medicine, not even medicine knows.
Wow.
And it's really important that, at least in my way of living, to have time to all this stuff is not easy. But if I have to quit something, I don't say a webinar, but something in a meeting to go to picture, I'll go to picture because it's something really from inside, and I have to do that.
Yeah, but I also so clearly remember a couple of years ago at one of the European meetings, you saying to me that, Cameron, if you did not take photographs during your surgery, you didn't do the surgery. And I was quite shocked because then I realized that this is something I need to add to my practice. So I've actually got a permanent member of staff who's taking photographs and now hopefully videos of the entire surgery every single time. So yeah, I think it is such a wise and important thing because you can now use those photos to crit yourself, or you can use them for presentations, etc. So no, I think those are very wise words.
It's a different field because I never mix my passion to photography of the facial plastics patients. But it's a must, of course. And we have colleagues that do it better than me, the professional photography of Rhino, and it's very, very important. And we have colleagues that they are obsessive, recording all the surgery. I think they are in the correct way. I don't do that, but I picture, of course. I always all the consultations after the surgery, all the consultations I picture. At least the 6 plans, of the face, and I have that in my files because it's really, really important. If you don't picture the patient, you don't know what you are doing because you have no way to compare what you achieve, and it's really important.
So, Miguel, as we talk about patients a little bit more, when a patient comes to see you, how much what we'd call morphing do you do with a patient? Discuss with them about what they would potentially want their nose to look like, etc.
Yes. Well, typically, patients nowadays, we are in a digital era, of course, Instagram, Facebook, and typically they come here and they know what they want. They were waiting for this surgery for 10, 20 years, and they know exactly what they want. And typically, when I see them, they have to tell me what they want. I never told first. Okay, it's one of my rules. They have to say exactly what they want, and then I picture. Of course, I picture them. I do 2D. I don't have the 3D. I do 2D morphing, and I balance. And it's amazing. I have difficulty to understand how can we practice rhinoplasty or facial plastic surgery without morphing. It's almost, for me, I can't believe how can people work without that. Because it's such a tool. When you say to a patient that I will project your nose, if he don't see the projection in a simulation, how can he imagine? We are not talking about the same thing. It's a valuable tool, very, very important for me. Always do morphing. And it's very funny because in the end, when we do the video morphing, from the pre to the post to the imaginary post, it's very important for me to feel the balance of the nose, what we are doing with the nose. And sometimes I change my idea. Imagine, for instance, in erratics, when we didn't feel at the beginning that it was really low, and we see in the video that it's really low. And sometimes I change my strategy for the surgery only with the morphing. So I learn each time I morph.
That's interesting.
A valuable tool for me.
And do you then give patients those photographs, or do you keep them?
Well, I let them to picture the screen. Okay, they picture the screen. With the mobiles, most of the times they have a mobile and they picture the screen. Well, I always tell them, of course, this is what I want to achieve. Okay, of course, this is not the final result. This is not and I always tell my patients that if I would go as a patient to a doctor, and if he show me a picture telling, well, this will be your results, instantly I would think that I'm with a non-trustable doctor, because it's impossible to assure something, whatever. I always say that this is what I want to achieve, but it will depend on many things, technically during the surgery, how much your blood, your healing process. Well, there are many, many things, and I discuss all that stuff with the patients, because it's almost all the times it's the first time they came here. And for them, it will be the first surgery most of the times.
And when you speak to patients, what are the things that you try and emphasize the most for them? Perhaps things they must be the most cautious of or be aware of. What are some of the things that you feel are important to tell patients?
Well, really important. Yes, we have to manage the expectations of the patients. I think it's the most important, what they want to achieve, really. And we are, I don't know, suddenly I start to think that we are always imagining a perfect nose. We surgeons, all surgeons, we want to see perfect noses, we want to see perfect outcomes, and we want to show perfect noses. I have many noses that they are not perfect. And, I use the prompt, the questionnaire to auto-evaluation of the patient. I use the Utrecht questionnaire, and I do it all the pre-op, 3 months and 12 months. And when it's from 0 to 10, the aesthetic evaluation. When I get a 10, I get a little bit scared, because no one has a 10, okay? At least is my opinion. When I get a 10 typically is what the Americans call a supporter, someone that likes me too much, okay? And when I get a 0, I don't remember the last one, it's the hater, it's not, statistically it's not significant. But what I mean, we published a study, in reality we published 2 studies with this, and we found that the average that we can reach, it's about 8.5. So I explained exactly that scale to the patient, and he or she suddenly knows that he will not or she will not have the 10, okay? Maybe 8.5, 9 at the best. And it's very good. I think that we are always improving. We are not making always perfect noses.
No, of course. I mean, we carry on. I mean, I think it's interesting you've mentioned 2 of Peter Lohouse's things. So I'm going to be interviewing Peter in the future. Do you ever use the Schnoss questionnaire from Sam Most?
No, I never. I think it's a very, very good. But this is a tool that because I use the questionnaire for a long time, if I change, I will not have how to compare. So the problem is starting with one. If you start with one good, and Utrecht questionnaire is a very good one. If you start with a good one, it's very hard to quit and to change to another one, because you cannot compare the results. But it's an excellent questionnaire.
No, that's awesome. So Miguel, I want to now move you. So you said, the PhD gets you into something further than that. And tell me now about this evidence-based research in Rhinoplasty Group. It's fascinating to see a small group of like highly influential rhinoplasty surgeons have come together. So why did you want to do this?
Well, you know that this COVID season 1 year ago, well, we are almost 1 year lockdown, the world is locked down. I think that what happened with WhatsApp, with Telegram, with Instagram, it was an explosion that it would happen lately if we didn't have COVID, but it would happen the same way. And suddenly it's really too much information, and all the people, it's very easy to share. Imagine I operate 5, 6, 7 rhinoplasties a week. Okay, if I share each one of the 7 rhinoplasties to a group, and if there is 1,000 of members of that group, you will have 7,000 rhinoplasties in 1 week. It's impossible. It's impossible to understand what they did. So what we tried to do, and I spoke with Sam at the beginning and some of other guys, we tried to do something that, a group without publicity, just straight to the point, and whenever possible, based on some evidence. Okay, we should have some evidence. Of course, there are many things that we don't have evidence enough, but there are many things that we have evidence. And I can share just two slides. May I share with
you?
Please,
go ahead. Yes, that'd be great.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I will share just to show people what. Well, I think that most of you know what is evidence-based medicine. It's not new. It has many years. And in rhinoplasty or in surgery, it's more difficult to find really good randomized trials, randomized or controlled studies. But anyway, we have these 3 circles: the clinical expertise, what clinicians know, patient values, and best research evidence. And we should mix all these. And this is the result. When we have one idea, we have to search the literature to know the best evidence that we have. We have to appraise that evidence. We have to apply that evidence, and then we have to access our results. This is typically how, this is almost very difficult to do in surgery, of course. This is almost applied in medical randomized controlled trials, that we should split a population in 2 in a control group, and you should do something. In this case, we are doing surgery, and we should measure our outcomes, because otherwise we are always discussing ideas, opinions. We are always discussing the lower level of evidence, that is expert opinion. It's very, very important to hear opinion of experts, of course. But if you can increase the level of evidence, it's really much better. And you go higher and higher, collection of reports, typically prospective observational studies, randomized and randomized control studies, and this is the top, of course, randomized controlled double-blind studies. So this is what we get. It was just a group of friends that they are interested in this. There are many other guys, many other colleagues that they are really interested in this, but the board must be finite, of course, to have some to be agile, of course. And nowadays we are 800, so people are really interested in evidence-based medicine, in this case evidence-based surgery, and I think that this is really the future. At least it's the more reliable way to discuss something. Otherwise you will have your opinion, I will have mine, and this is just to spare time and to know that at least everything that you have in that group should be scientifically, I wouldn't say proved, but some support, some basis of support. Otherwise, you will have 1,000 opinions in one Sunday afternoon. Typically, it seems impossible to check all that opinions. And
No, Miguel, I mean,
works
it's fantastic.
really.
I really want to commend you guys for doing it. I think it's really good to have that. So if someone's listening to the podcast, they can't see the YouTube video, how do they get in touch with you to be able to become a member of this group?
Yes, I think I shared the. I will share again.
Is there an email address that they can send an email to?
Yes, it's this email. I will show you. Evidence-based rrg.gmail.com.
Great. So that's
So
evidence-based
yes.
rrg@gmail.com. Thank you. That's fantastic.
Yes.
So, Miguel, I have a question for you. You're in the forefront of a lot of innovation in rhinoplasty. Where do you see the rhinoplasty going in the next decade?
Well, it's a hard question. I don't know. Well, maybe I think that we should see rhinoplasty as all surgery. We are not different from orthopedic surgery, vascular surgery. All the surgeons, I think I have a good relation. I work in a general hospital, a big hospital. All surgeons are really interested in doing less surgery with better results. Whatever we do, we want to do less surgery, less trauma with better results. Rhinoplasty is not an island. We work just like them. And, at least, for instance, you know that I'm a defender of the so-called preservation rhinoplasty. Well, it makes all sense, of course. Maybe it's a little bit overpriced expression, maybe. I know and I understand people that don't do the so-called preservation. They say that we are really overpricing the expression of preservation rhinoplasty. But I think that in all fields of surgery, they are trying to do preservation in all fields of surgery. And I think that maybe not in 10 years, but in 15 or in 20 years, we will have finally artificial cartilage. And it will be it will be the big change, the big shift. It will be with artificial cartilage.
Yes. So I want to come back to that preservation. So can you explain to the listeners the difference between the different types of preservation rhinoplasty and what is structured preservation and not?
Well, there is no consensus, of course. There is no one that says that the expression preservation rhinoplasty. I think it was coined by Rolling Daniel and Yves Sabin. And, it was just, it has a past, a long past, okay, from the Lothrop, from the early 90s. And the question is to go into the cartilaginous middle vault or not. So the question is, can I lower a hump and preserve the roof? And it's funny because the first description of this preservation rhinoplasty is before Joseph. So it doesn't appear just like an opposite of Joseph, you know. It's funny. Historically, the first description, Lothrop, is before Jacques Joseph. So the idea of lowering a dorsum, a Caucasian nose, typically a Caucasian nose, and preserving the roof is very, very old. And there are many ways to try to deal with that. And I think that was Rolling Daniel and Yves Sabin that coined the expression preservation rhinoplasty. Well, it makes all sense. If it is possible, we should preserve, of course. The question is, I'm a big defender of preservation rhinoplasty. I have some slides that I can share with you.
Yeah, please go ahead. And Miguel, if I can ask you, what percentage of your cases do you do the spare roof technique? Well,
in primaries, I start always to do that, to do the spare roof technique. Now I'm pushing with a new variation, and it's the first time I'm talking about that. That is the spare roof technique B, or what we call the Ferreira Ishida technique. That I do something mixed in between Ishida and me, and it's the first time I'm talking publicly about that. We have a paper that was accepted in PRS, and basically we are preserving the bony cap in the V-shaped nasal bones. I can share with you some slides, and I can show exactly what we are doing.
We'd love that.
Yes? Okay. So Basically, okay. You know and about. Are you seeing my screen?
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, you are seeing. Okay, I think that we must nowadays, in my opinion, we should talk not only about closed and open rhinoplasty, but closed preservation, open preservation, closed structure, open structure. We have, in my opinion, we have 4 typical approaches to primary rhinoplasty. So, and in our group, what we found is that structure is about 75% and preservation about 25%. So the idea is very simple. The idea of preservation, of course, lowering the dorsum, flatten the dorsum, and this is the most difficult part, and smooth the dorsum. This is some final refinements. I will go a little bit. This is one of the anatomical bases of our technique. And we found at this point the junction between the perpendicular plate of the ethmoid and the nasal bones is before, when we go cephalocaudally, is before the beginning of the nasal hump. So we published this study. I will go a little bit, I will move forward, and we published this hump scale. This is the average measures that we get in our population. And we found that this is the ethmoidal point. This is the beginning of the nasal hump, okay? This is the Kiphian, the rhinium, the hump apex, most of the times cartilaginous, and then the end of the nasal hump. So we typify our hump. We decide to do the spare roof exactly here. And the question is always this question. We want to go from this nose to this nose. How can we achieve this? Of course, we can use Joseph. We can take all the hump and then reconstruct. It works. We know that it's absolutely proven that there are many structural surgeons that they have excellent results, and there's no doubt about that. And we can do this preserving the roof. How can we do this? Well, typically, the spare roof technique, as you know, I uncap the bony cap. I do it with a diamond burr. Nowadays, I'm still starting to use the piezo, and this is the spare roof technique, the way I present it so many times. And one of the big problems is these S-shaped nasal bones. And what happens with preservation is when classical preservation, we push down, let down. When we do the osteotomies, the impactation osteotomies or the impaction osteotomies, we can still get this slightly hump. So this is one of the limitations that the typical or classical push down, let down might have in some really S-shaped nasal bones. Well, what we started to do from half a year ago, I will show you. Well, let me pass this one. This is the spare roof technique itself. The slides from preservation rhinoplasty from Dr. Daniel and Dr. Aaron Cousins, dorsal preservation, tip preservation, and soft tissue preservation, 3 kinds of preservation, foundation and surface techniques. It will come out a paper very soon. Let me pass the slides to show you how we are dealing now with the bony cap. Okay, here we have the V-shaped nasal bones, and here the S-shaped nasal bones. And what we are doing now, okay, and this is what I'm starting to do to the V-shaped nasal bones, is preserving the bony cap, and basically this is completely based on the aesthetic dorsal lines that are the most important the most important lines in the frontal view, of course, in the nose. This is what we design, and what we do in these V-shaped nasal bones is that we take out a triangular shape of the cartilage, as you can see here. First, we take out the strip of septum, just like in the classical spare roof technique. Then we do these osteotomies in the aesthetic lines that we have marked in the skin. Then we take this triangle of bone, just the bone, Okay, we take out the bone. I will show you. We release the lateral keystone area. We do the lateral osteotomies, and then with just a simple tap tap, this roof goes down, but we preserve. You can see the way we do. You can do endonasal with the piezo. You can do in different ways. We have just to do just to follow the aesthetic lines. It's very important. We take this triangle. This is the release of the lateral keystone area. This is the final touch. You can do this endonasally the same way. And this is the final result. Here, this was a V-shaped nasal bone. We preserve completely the line of the dorsal line. And this is what we get. Then we do in the end the septoplasty. Then we suture, just like in the spare roof technique, we suture to the dorsal septum. And this is what we have in the end. And I will show you a movement, what happened with this technique that we call the spare roof technique B, preserving B of bony, preserving the bony cap. So we are taking out this triangle, releasing the lateral keystone area, and what happened, I will show you again the movie. I think it's quite obvious what happened. All the structure goes down because we release the lateral keystone area just with a fracture here, one simple fracture. So it was accepted to publish in PRS, and it will be very soon. You can see here, and this is very, very interesting. It's a personal approach. This is completely dissection that I made just for teaching purposes, but in real surgery, I don't do all these dissection. I preserve this perichondrium and this periosteum. Okay, this is for teaching purposes only. In real surgery, I only dissect the parts that I will work on. So I take this triangle, okay, I release the lateral keystone area, but I preserve this perichondrium and this periosteum, and I get really good results. You can see, oops, okay, you can see here, because this is beautiful, okay, we can see all the anatomy, but if we are operating like this, at least in my hands, we get less support, and typically I do in that way. So this is what I had to show you, and I hope it was a good surprise. We are going to publish this very, very soon.
That's fantastic, Miguel. Thanks, eh? So a question I have is, how many patients are in that series?
This one, in this, I think we made about 40 wow. patients.
Oh, that's fantastic.
With the spare roof technique B, okay? Spare roof technique B. The other, the spare roof technique, the traditional, we have more than 600 patients. Yeah. And, well, I think that every time this is possible, the B, preserving the bony cap, I think it's absolutely, it's more physiological, less traumatic. Of course, we preserve the bony cap. We have to go just straight to the structural part that we want. We don't have to release anything more.
No, I think your architect friends have helped you there.
Sorry?
Your friends, your architect friends have helped you.
Oh, yes. Not exactly. Yes, I don't know. Sometimes we have ideas. Our brain is always working. And, well, it was something in between my technique and Ishida technique, okay? And that's why I call it Ferreira Ishida, because it's something, I think that it's the best of the two techniques. But anyway, the structural support, the anatomical support of this technique, in my opinion, is still the spare roof technique, the same logical for the spare roof technique. We are sparing a roof here completely.
No, it's fascinating.
In the technical.
Yeah. Miguel, it's been so interesting to chat to you this evening. I really appreciate everything. I don't know if you've got a last little thing you might want to add before we close off the podcast.
Well, many things. Thank you so much for having me here. Thank you so much you are doing such a revolution in rhinoplasty communication. Of course, you know, it's your time now, and I'm very, very seriously with you. I told you once that you are doing something that like the United Nations of rhinoplasty. And it's incredible. You occupy a space that doesn't belong to anyone. Now it's yours. You and the South African team, you are really a wonderful team with amazing ideas. And congrats to you all in your name. And thank you so much for having me.
Miguel, thanks, man. But I think it's just always an inspiration for me going overseas and meeting the people that write all the articles and write the textbooks and actually see just how approachable they are and how happy they are to teach. So, yeah, thank you very much for this evening, and thank you to all our listeners, and we'll catch you again next week.